Okay, we're back for the final segment of building a character from without. Today we're going to talk about ambitions, we're going to talk about disappointments, we're going to talk about complexes, we're going to talk about fears, phobias, and we're going to talk about obsessions. Okay, so let's talk about ambitions. Ambitions are, what do I want out of life? What do I want out of this life, meaning the world of the play, the world of the film. And this is not to be confused with objectives, which are simply, what do I want in the moment? What do I want in this scene? What do I want from this character right now? As opposed to, what do I need? What do I want? What drives my behavior? And this can be synonymous with the super objective. Right? Not always, but often, or certainly it's in league with the super objective. What do I want? What do I need? What will I need to be happy? What will I need to feel like I'm successful? What will make me sleep better at night? And obviously it's different for every character. Okay, let's look in terms of like Shakespeare. Hamlet. Well, what is Hamlet's ambition? Quite simply, it's his ambition to avenge his father's death and make things right, and depose the false king, and in doing so, become the king himself. The boy must become a man, and all of these things. And so he must come into his own, and all of these things come together. And so, yeah, revenge, right? But not just revenge for the sake of revenge, but to avenge his father, and who is his father and also his king. And this is a great example of a character who's very smart, who's very educated, and those are two of his biggest obstacles, because Hamlet spends a lot of the play getting in his own way. When his path in many cases is quite clear. But Hamlet has to overthink things, he has to overanalyze things, he's got to look at it from 6 different ways from Sunday, and, he's his own worst enemy. And it really is only in the final moments of the play that Hamlet finally comes to succeed and to finally avenge his father, and literally by killing his uncle, and for a few fleeting moments he succeeds, and he is the man that he wishes to be, and he does grow up, and he is no longer a boy, and he is heroic, and because he's poisoned, then he's dead, and that's it, which is one of the reasons why it's a tragedy and not a comedy or just a drama. So that's Hamlet. That's Hamlet's ambition. Your ambition could be a lot different. You could, your ambition might simply be to be adored, to be loved, to be appreciated for who you are, and exalted, and held up high, and admired, and embraced. And if that's the case, then you could be Richard III. Right, everybody thinks Richard's a villain. Well, on paper he's a villain. He doesn't think of himself as a villain, right? That's a negative. You can't play a negative. I can't play evil. I can't play bad. I can't play a bad man. What does that really mean? Anyways, that's what people say about other people, not what they say about you or what you think about you. So, Richard III's ambition really is of course, to succeed and to rule and to have power and to be the king, but those are just stepping stones to a larger emotional need, to sort of an ugly, deformed little man that nobody really appreciates, and he's very smart, and he's very cunning, and he's used by his family for his strengths and his abilities, and yet he's not appreciated, and he feels unloved and unwanted. Okay, so when we're also talking about characters' ambitions, you have to think about this is driven by what do they have, or rather, more importantly, what don't they have? What do they need? What is this need that is bigger than anybody else's need in the room? And how does that drive behavior? And how does that affect your choices? And also, how does it affect how you see yourself? Okay, so let's talk about complexes, right? Complexes primarily come out of the work of Carl Jung, right? So they're complicated emotional problems that may or may not be conscious, right? Your character may be aware that they've got this issue, or not. But whether they're aware of it, whether they're conscious of it or not, it all drives behavior. Now, complexes are great things to work with, and there's a long list of established and recognized ones. The most obvious ones being Oedipal complex, right, or Electra complex. The thing with complexes is that you want to be sure that whatever you're assigning to a character has to be grounded, and I mean really grounded, in the given circumstances of the story and the character, right? You don't want to be assigning a mommy fixation to your character if there's really no evidence for it in the story, right? It's got to match the given circumstances of your character in the story. It's got to match their behavior. It's got to match things they say, right? And it doesn't necessarily, the action isn't necessarily always on the line, meaning that not everything that I think as a character is going to come out of my mouth. Lots of times things that I say will be at seeming opposition to some of the things that I do. Okay, well, that's just kind of complex unconscious human behavior or outright manipulation by the character. But overall, whatever complex you want to assign to a character has got to match the overall, the other pieces of the overall puzzle. Okay, the best way I can think of as a complex, if you're dealing with a complex with your character, you want to think about the complex as like a whale, right? I mean, it's something that's down there, it's deep, it's powerful, it's swimming, it affects the current, it affects things, it affects the movement of your character, there's influence there, and every now and then, it comes up for air, and then it goes right back down again, where it continues to swim deeply and affect things, and move, and touch, and most of the time, it's invisible. Okay, so let's talk about fear and phobias. Okay? Fear and phobias. Without getting too clinical, the primary difference between fear and phobia is if I'm afraid of something and I encounter it, I can still function. If I'm phobic and I encounter something, most likely I can't function or function in any reasonable way, right? My rationale breaks down. My ability to function breaks down. My ability to think and speak clearly breaks down. So, does every character need to have a phobia? No. If it serves the play, yes. If it serves the character, yes. If it helps you drive behavior, yes. But like a lot of these aberrations in behavioral problems, you really have to think about, again, is it justified? Does it work? Does it serve the play? It's really that simple. There are different types of phobias. There's a whole list of phobias. Again, you're a method actor. You've got to know about these things. There are books that you just really need to read independently of our work here in class, and things that you'll have to do. I mean, again, I think we've already talked about this. You need to be reading at least one, if not two books on body language. You've really got to have a firm grasp on that. You've got to understand psychology. You need to understand phobias, right? You've got to read at least one good book. You can look at my website. I think I've got a list of recommended reading there. On the subject, you really need to familiarize yourself with various lists of phobias. Again, you don't have to have a full clinical understanding of all these things, but you've got to have a relatively clear one. Listen, when you're going to play phobia, just make sure that that it matches the puzzle, right? It matches the given circumstance of a character. You're not assigning it randomly. And the other thing, again, you have to watch out for, you don't want to play the phobia, okay? What you want to do is you want to play your resistance to it. You don't want to play fear. Fear is a negative. You want to play your resistance, your avoidance, your struggle against it, your ability not to lose control, your ability to keep talking and not sweat and not panic and not be overwhelmed. But bit by bit, of course, you lose control and you give up those things bit by bit. But what's interesting is for us, the audience, is to watch the struggle, right? We want to see you struggle and fight against it, and we're not to give into it, because that's just boring and obvious. Okay, listen, the last thing we're going to talk about for a minute or two are obsessions. Obsessions are great character elements, right? They're not always in the script, but they can be assigned to the character by the actor or director. Again, you have to make sure that it matches. You have to make sure that it meshes. You have to make sure that it all comes together, right, with everything else you're doing. Obsessions are not complexes. Obsessions are conscious behaviors, conscious ways of behaving, and they're usually based on some sort of irrational fear, fear of giving up control, fear of contamination, fear of violence, sexual violence, religious violence, physical violence, things like that. There are things that I can't help myself doing. Okay? I can't stop thinking about something or someone. I can't stop, I can't stop touching my nose. I can't stop going back into the kitchen and checking the oven like 27 times to just make sure that it's really off. Because I'm afraid of fire. I'm afraid of dying. I'm things like this. Again, they don't have to be super obvious. They can be relatively subtle. It really depends on how much you want to turn the microscope up on a particular obsession. I think the most successful obsessions that are played by actors, again, are relatively subtle. There are things that drive behavior. There are things that keep the character engaged in interior life, interior behavior. And this just adds another level of complexity and detail to what's already going on in the script. You just have to be really careful that it doesn't take over, right? That it doesn't draw focus in a way that you don't want it to draw focus. And again, you don't want to play the obsession. What you want to do is you want to play your resistance to it. You want to play your struggle against it. You want to play everything I can do not to go back and touch that oven for the 27th time. And yet, ultimately, I have an obsession and I have to. But it's the steps along the way that get you there. And that is what's interesting for the audience to watch. And that's what's most successful for you to play as an actor. So again, when we're thinking about obsession, when you're playing an obsession, you have to think about when I'm in the grip of the obsession, what does my character hear? What does my character see? What does my character do? How do I try to resist giving into the obsession? How does it affect me when I'm successful? How does it affect me when I'm unsuccessful? What happens to me when I do give in to the obsession? Does it make me feel good? Does it make me feel guilty? Does it make me feel dirty? Does it make me feel sad? Good example, Michael Keaton's work in this film Birdman a few years back. I think this wonderful work. And okay, here's an actor. He's an actor playing an actor who's a big star, a former star, who had been playing, Birdman, obviously, / Batman. He's been playing a superhero and getting a lot of money and getting a lot of recognition. And at some point, doesn't want to do it anymore because he's a serious artist or something like that. And maybe his career's not going so well after that. And so in the course of the action of the film, he's trying to be a serious artist, and he's putting all his own money up in a Broadway show in an attempt to prove that to the world. And yet, who's in the room with him all the time, talking to him in his ear? Inescapable. Birdman, right? So fine. An alter ego, so be it. But this is obsession if I've ever seen it. And Keaton really does a wonderful job with it. And that's the thing, is the more he resists and the more he tries to block it out, and I don't hear you and I don't see you and get away from me, and throwing things at this imaginary figure that's in the room with him, but it's all driving his behavior, right? It's all based on fear. It's about fear that he's not good enough, that he's never been good enough, that he's not a real actor, that he's just that he's just a bullshit Hollywood twinkie, and that nobody takes him seriously. His kid doesn't take him seriously. Critics don't take him seriously, and he's lost, right? I mean, he's a little boy, and he's terrified that he's just not enough, and yet he continues to struggle and struggle and struggle all through the film until he finally, he gives in to the character, and he embraces him. In a way, and in a strange way, it empowers him. And, well, either he's psychotic or this is magic realism, which is another question about the film. But in terms of his behavior, everything that's coming out of the Keaton character in that film really is a response to his needs and his fears and his attempts to compensate for what he is or he is not. Thing you want to think about when you're playing an obsession, right? Obviously you're playing a resistance to it, but also you need to think about what are the triggers, right? What are the things that set you off? What are the things that set off the obsession? Because you're not going to be even a character who's obsessed with something. Even say I'm the Michael Keaton character in Birdman. I'm not going to be struggling with Birdman all the time. Other things are going to come up. Other things are going to get my attention. Other things are going to occupy my time and my mind and my emotions. But periodically, something will come up. Bing. Right? We call that a trigger. So I think the key to playing an obsession successfully is to figure out a way that you line up all the triggers and orchestrate them in such a way that they pop up or they happen at key moments in the action, right? And so really it's about orchestrating them in a way that it all kind of flows and then bumps and then flows and then bumps and then flows and then bumps, right? It's called rising action, rising action, rising action. And there's a certain music in the playing of that, right? And there's a certain style in the playing of that. And, you just want to find those things. And that takes a little bit of experimentation and time. But when you do it right, you do it right. Okay, anyway, so that's the last segment here on building a character from without. I hope you're enjoying this work. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the 12-Step Studio, you can come visit us at www.12stepmethod.com.